Welcome to another episode of The Man Space, where my co-host Marquise and I talk about topics that interest and facilitate the thinking and problem solving for men, because the goal has always been to build a place and a space that feels safe and provides a graceful environment for men to explore their challenges, their troubles, and what concerns them, because we live in a society where men are told, you'll figure it out. Boys are raised, don't cry, don't think too much, just go accomplish. So when we raise boys to be task and result oriented and rip the feelings out of them and say, if you cry, if you feel, you're not a man, was socially engineering almost a android type existence for our boys. And then mothers do this, right? So women do this as they are raising their sons, not realizing, because that's the social expectation. And that plants the seed for what happens down the road. And then for the rest of that boy's life, as he becomes a man, everybody, all the women in his life are saying, you can't care about me. You don't feel. Well, the last woman ripped it out of me, but she did it with love, right? So,
Yeah.
as we go into today's conversation with that premise, Marquis, let's talk about masculine energy and welcome. Say hello to the audience and
Thank
take.
you, Dr. Kaz. So glad to be here. And I'm looking forward to wherever our conversation goes. I love that while we have a topic at hand, how we dive into it's never premeditated. So let's see what magic shows up.
So, when you think of masculine energy, Marquis,
Mm.
what comes up for you from your own perspective? And then how does that compare to the perspective of your father, your uncles, your grandfather, your teachers, other men around you? Because perspectives are different.
Yeah, they are. Dr. Kaz, that's a really great question because I wasn't sure where I would go and I was sorting through as you were talking about it. And ironically, for me, it goes back to basic fundamentals, which I was surprised that's where it would go. My job is to love, to protect, to conquer, to lead, to advise, and to provide safety. So maybe not only those things, but I think of the traditional masculine role. What I've seen in my life is that men who take on the responsibility without excuse. My father is one of my most favorite examples because one of the things that he was able to ingrain in me is that the results you experience in your life are always a result of your doing. You don't get to blame anyone else. And I know that that is where the difference starts to kick in because in society, what we've practiced, at least in the Western world, if something goes wrong, based on how we watch leadership, based on how information is shared, it's always someone else's fault. I wasn't raised in a familiar culture, familial culture like that. I was raised in one like, no, it's on you to show up, to do what you need to do, and that includes relying on your partner to get information. But ultimately, the final decision when it matters is on you, and you have to be willing to take that responsibility. It doesn't mean you rule; it means you accept responsibility, no matter which way it goes. Been the baseline behind how I think, how I move, how I feel. There's something unique that my father offered me that leveled it up just a little bit from the primal base alone. Because I don't think anything's wrong with the primal, not at all. I think it's healthy, I think it's good. But one of the things that my father gave me to help me level it up just a little bit more or differently is a sense of purpose. My dad didn't leave it at, hey, you just need to do these things because that defines you as a man. He instilled through different books and different exposure this necessity for purpose, that there's something deeper on the inside of me, something that I'm uniquely made for, and that it is my ultimate. I feel like I do see that separation in society. I see it amongst my associates, some business partners. There is the rote primal state of manhood, which again, we need that. I think men should honoring, protecting, being the voice as a partner, not as the ruler. But if that's where you stop when it comes to your energy, then I think that feeds into a previous episode where we talked about men not having peers, men not being vulnerable, men waking up in their mid 50s going, "Oh no, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Goodbye, wife, kids, figure it out. Here's some money, leave me alone. I'll take half. I'm happy with half. Goodbye." Uh, Looking for peace. But that level that has been instilled in me of discovering purpose and letting that be my baseline, I think is what gave me that. As a matter of fact, quick story. At 31 years old, I remember waking up. I was 31 or 32. I remember waking up and it hit me. That's probably when I had my midlife crisis. I'm dying. And it wasn't a physical death, it was a spiritual death, but literally dying. And I said to myself, it's not because of someone else or my circumstances. It's because I'm not actually choosing my life. I'm just going through what's given to me. And it was at that point that I started making some changes that were uncomfortable for me and others. In fact, went through a divorce around that window of time as well. Trying to unpack, discover my actual truth. Who am I really? What do I need to step away from and step into? And those fundamental things, hopefully, I'll be able to share a little light on those areas in a moment. But that's when my journey began because until we step into purpose and we're choosing our life, then I think all of us at one point or another are going to feel that deep disappointment. This episode we talked about midlife crisis, our energy is going to be drained and we're going to look for outs anywhere we can find it because we've not found that sense of purpose, which I believe is the driver behind every person on the planet. Why are you born? Why are you here? And that's how I would define it. Does that answer the question? I just sort of gave what was inside of me. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Lower left-hand corner.
Gives me perspective on how you are processing this, right? So that is insightful. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing it,
Mhm,
right? Coming from the East, we look at energy as the life force,
mhm,
right? So the soul itself is an embodiment of energy. We
mhm,
are vibration. We greet each other this way, right? So I see the soul and the energy you represent are a source of energies from the same place. But
mhm,
how we focus our energy is different.
mhm.
And a lot of times the Western world has borrowed the Eastern tradition, but then misappropriated it in a way it's applied it.
Mhm.
So yoga, meditation, spirituality, these are not separate and apart. Yoga is not exercise. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the energy is about where in your body, which chakra are you focusing your energy on?
Mhm.
Because where you are focused on, that's where your energy flows.
Yes.
And root chakra is very primal, very reproductive. And the crown chakra is very spiritual and very much let's focus on the higher
Mhm,
power and
mhm.
how I am a gift of the higher power and how I'm impacting all that was created with that higher power. So we have two extremes.
Yeah.
And in an Epicurean society where materiality is everything, and
Mhm,
the bigness of your toys and the size of your paycheck are more important, the society tends to live in the
mhm.
root chakra. So you talk about self-awareness, it's way higher up in
Yeah.
that energy level.
Yeah.
But if the social construct is forcing you to live in a base way, then there is no opportunity to tap into or to aspire to a higher level because that is not visible. You can't aspire to something you can't see. So, what's coming up for me is as we talk about energy and you're combining energy with self awareness
Mhm.
and where those lessons and growth take place, how do you see the best way to help men take that journey so that as they age, they're ascending their chakras?
Mhm.
And when you're in your heart chakra, your heart is open, you're kind, you're compassionate, you're generous. More than half our social problems will disappear because not everybody is living in their base instinct.
So for me, I encourage men on that from the angle of looking at the 7 areas of life, right? And setting aspirational goals, really getting quiet with yourself to find out we all have 7 areas, right? They can vary, one or two may vary for people, but essentially it's spiritual, mental, physical, vocational, relational. I'll hit them as I go through. But if I'm not looking at the whole of who I am as a man, then I'm missing out. And like you said, most of what we look at is the root chakra, and I don't have all the chakras memorized, but the root chakra, survival. And
Mhm.
if we stay there, then when we look at the 7 areas of life, we're essentially just looking at either physical and financial, maybe relational, maybe. And if that's all we focus on, how strong I am, how great I look, or how big my bank account is, then I'm missing 5 other very vital areas of my life, or I'm phoning them in. I like to take spiritual first as a quick note, especially when I talk about phoning it in. Spiritual, I think, to me, speaks about who am I? Why am I here? The real me, not the task oriented me. And that requires deep meditation. That requires times of silence, times of isolation. But what we, not all of us, but what many of us do in the Western world is we dial it in by going to our church or our synagogue, doing our deal there, and we call it spiritual, just paying homage to God with our mouth versus doing the real work to find out how am I wired in my connection with divinity, because I'm not separate over here, like lost. I'm just not present to what's inside of me. So I think that whether that's a spiritual retreat, the yoga practice of learning to breathe and be with your breath, again, as you said, not the exercise, but being with your breath and being present and allowing your body to melt and move because you're one, or learning the oneness with oneself, is a very big deal when we talk about the spiritual aspect instead of something's going to save me down the road. And as long as I pay a tithe or do a good deed, it's going to be taken care of. The second is mental. Um, there's a stat, Dr. Kaz, I know you're also in education, but I believe it was something like by the time we graduate, almost everyone's like there's like a high percentage of people who stop reading books and will probably never pick up a book again. So we're not growing mentally. We settle into a function and we stick to that function without expansion. Yes, we might do a CBT. Yes, we might take a course here or there. But if we're not in a daily ritual of renewing our mind, something I'm in right now, I like to borrow from the Bible on this one. Be transformed by renewing your mind. This is the battleground. So if we're not constantly strengthening our mind and expanding not just in knowledge, but how we think about something. As a matter of fact, looping that with the spiritual, I heard Dr. Michael Beckwith about 3 weeks ago say, we should never stick in the context of whatever religion we were raised with. That it's a gateway, it's a pathway, but we should always be evolving to higher levels of understanding. Not, I was born a Christian, I'm gonna be a Christian when I die. He's like, no, you should surpass that understanding in your experience because you're constantly developing spiritually and mentally. So that's what I mean by mental, really expanding where you are into new possibilities. The third that I'll touch in is financial. If you didn't watch Dr. Cass's show on long term care, for example, that's an arena and a show that you need to watch. So we start looking at how we move money differently, not just the accumulation of toys or not just how much money can I make. For example, Dr. Cass, one of the things I'm doing as an entrepreneur, yes, I'm growing the amount of revenue I can take in, but I'm also looking at moving so I can shrink the amount that I have to spend out so that I reach whatever those goals are sooner than later with quality of life versus trying to figure out how can I earn more? How can I earn more? Because in Western society, that might drive you away from everything else. My brother says it this way: how much are they paying you to give up your dream? Or shall I say, purpose? So I don't want to be in a situation where I'm only looking to grow. I'm also trying to look how to balance it so that I can grow assets, so that I can actually live purpose as a part of my existence. Another area is familial or relational. We talked about this in another episode as well. as a man, if we are not in community, and I don't mean brotherhood's super important, by the way, but if we're not living in community, fulfilling our role inside of our neighborhood, inside of our family, then that will lead to frustration, to say the least, if we're not actually evolving because we've made the world about us instead of how we fit. The term I like to use is interdependence. We need them, they need us. And our ability to discover the value of others in our community, as well as bring what we have to both teach and be taught, regardless of age, then we're missing the nuggets of wisdom that can only come from a full, well lived life. And then, last area, but not least, physical. In America, while some may purport that we're the greatest nation in the world, what I will say is this: we are statistically the sickest nation in the world. We are not moving our bodies as much as we need to, and then we're consuming things that the body doesn't consider food. So it's going to be on you to start taking that very seriously instead of putting it off for another day. Because the reality is, if no matter how much you've prepared financially, if you're ill and you're ill before time, that money's probably as much as you thought you'd give to your family, it's not going to go to them. It's going to pay for insurance. It's going to pay for medical. It's going to be utilized in ways that you didn't intend to. So your job is to take care of your stature as much as possible now so that there's more available then. But not only that, it's also so that you're available for the people you love. I was a father who'd fall asleep on his kids, and occasionally I might, but I know exactly what happened if I do now. It doesn't count if I'm asleep on them. Those precious moments that are fleeting because one's moving to London, one's in college in Connecticut, I have to be alert, present every time we have an encounter because I don't know if that will be my last moment or what that moment's impact may have on their future or something they may not be sharing. But because I'm present, I may share a nugget that gives them the tool they need to move forward. And that's our necessity being in that familiar relationship. But it can only happen if I'm taking care of my physical body. I'm closing with this thought before I know you probably have a question or so. I have a client right now that I'm working with who realize they're far more irritable than they'd like to be. Well, I know from spending time with them and doing some assessments, part of it's because they haven't been taking care of their physical. They eat whatever they can find on the go, not understanding that all that acid causes us to be moody. We're not able to rationalize. So then we do really weird things like be rude to the people we love. So physical can't be denied, or you'll be buying packets of hymns and other things like that. That's super big on the market, super acceptable, and so not necessary. So those 7 areas of life are critical for us to have a full sense of energy, to fully be present. If we stay just in the root chakra of physical and financial, you're doing yourself a big disservice. What do you want to add, Dr. Cass?
Some interesting thoughts you shared. So I just want to come behind it and add some data to it.
Yeah,
Occupational hazard, right?
love it.
So for us to keep our brain functional and build new neural networks so that we don't go into Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's and all of that, every year we have to learn two new things.
Oh, wow.
So that our brain, that includes a new language, learn a new language and learn a new instrument, right?
Yeah.
Play a new sport. Doing the same things over and over and over again, the brain gets dull.
Hmm.
So we need to build neural pathways, and making your chakras, your energy centers work is going to reduce your financial liability, increase your financial resiliency, and give you a better quality of life and prevent midlife crisis, right? So these are all related. So I wanted to mention the mental acuity and the bridges and the connections our brain cells need to build are very important. And the only food that builds new brain cells is cacao, chocolate in its purest form. So chocolates are not just for your wife or your girlfriend, for you too. So have some chocolate from time to time. If you don't like it sweet, do what the original Mayan community and Aztec communities did. Make a nice chocolate mole, make it spicy chocolate. It's very tasty, right? That's one. And the other thing I wanted to mention from a statistic perspective is the happiest men with the best quality of life is men who age with a wife to take care of them. The happiest women with the best quality of life is single women who never had to take care of a husband or children. So for a woman, her sisterhood is the quality of life. For a man, his life partner is the quality of life.
That's so interesting. So in all ways, we need women. Let's protect them.
Yes. And if you notice in most cultures, when there are homelessness, there are more men homeless
Oh, yeah.
than there are women. Because women have always loved and nurtured and cared for a lot of people, somebody will take them in. These are interesting secondary data, right? And observation. And the other thing I wanted to mention is you had mentioned we go and phone it in by going to the synagogue, going to the temple, going to the church.
Making sure we don't phone it in by
Yeah.
just going, yeah.
But still, it is looking for the divine outside when the divine is already inside us. So, what if we rewire our thinking to say, and we have actually a prayer in this, in my language, my body is a temple.
Yeah.
My soul is the altar of God. My mouth is the gateway. My eyes are the lights that beckon people in, right? And so all my senses are in service to the divine inside of me.
Yeah.
And we don't raise kings and queens, we raise gods and goddesses.
Repeat that
So,
because most people miss that. And it's the truth. It's not this idealistic thing. It's like a higher truth.
and the god and goddess goes hand in hand because masculine energy and feminine energy need to sit side by side for it to reach full potential.
Right.
Otherwise, we are trying to cash in one side of the coin without the other being present. Then it's really not a full coin.
So good.
So, understanding energy from a man's perspective is to understand that masculinity is only a piece of the human energy,
Right.
and there is femininity and kindness, compassion, nurturing are all feminine energies, but healed masculine energy embodies both. The same way healed feminine energy embodies both. Because if the father gets sick, the mother can step in. If the mother gets sick, the father steps in. The
Right.
family unit is sustainable.
That's right.
So, how do we make sure our energy is flowing and flowing in a way that it keeps the community, whether it's the family, self, family, community, country, the global society, all of it intact? Because if we channel our energy right, we wouldn't have half the problems we have.
No, not at all. We wouldn't have the majority of them, Cass. It's one of those things where when you don't do this work to discover who you are, then you're always looking outside yourself all over again. So if something happens, it's those people. But when you do the work, you understand that if my neighbor's suffering, it may be because I'm not showing up. We don't take that sense of responsibility. I know we talk about society. We are society. Society is not outside of us. We are it. We make it what it is. It's not the politicians, it's us. And our lack or knowledge thereof of how and who we are directly impacts everything that happens around us. I know in the US right now, we're experiencing different dysfunction, different communities being frustrated and upset. But what's beautiful is that there's starting to be a little leverage to go, wait a minute, I need you. Wait a minute, you need me. Wait a minute, I was silent before and I didn't know. Wow. So, where it may not be the masses, there's this awakening of the necessity of one another and how we need one another to bring this about in the community. But that only comes if I show up having done the work for me. It only comes if I.
Such an interesting topic. We could go for hours, Marquise,
Yeah.
but we are at that mark. So, what I am going to do is invite you to share a nugget of wisdom as you go ahead and wrap it up.
The best version of you is a full version. It's not what you bring to the table, it's who you are. And that's what we're all longing for you to authentically show up healed or at least doing the work, because that's when all the other pieces start to make sense and life gets the richness. That's it.
Thank you so much, Marquez. I couldn't have said it better. So remember, we're all walking home. Let's take each other's hand and walk each other home. And we will see you at our next episode.